with Cheezy Sales Cinema, the program that makes fun of sales, training, and promotional films of the past. And I am here, as always, with my co-host Chris Mei. And Chris, tonight, we're taking on a topic that everybody can relate to.
Who doesn't eat? Who doesn't go out and dine? Who doesn't like food, period? Eating when we were knuckle dragging hunters and gatherers was a necessity. And now it's, well, for the Western world, sadly, it's a social event. It's a social event. And there's a lot of mixing of food and social events in tonight's program.
Yes, we call it the art of dinner because, really it's like you say, it's more than just food. Dinner is very much a cultural touchstone and has been for a long time. It's related to culture. It's related to history. A lot of people don't know that dinner actually comes from a French word that originally meant breakfast because it was the first meal of the day. But interestingly enough, it was served when we think of as lunch being served, which was the middle of the day. People didn't eat originally at the beginning of the day.
It's dinner, which means breakfast, but was served at lunch.
At lunch, yes.
Aha. Okay. Vive la France.
And the interesting thing is, for people in agricultural communities before the Industrial Revolution, like even my dad remembers when he was working on the farms out west, dinner was the meal in the middle of the day around noon, and it was, the big significant meal. And then supper would be held later in the day, and it would be less of a big deal. Right?
So would your dad have called it breakfast, dinner, supper?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
And a lot of people who grew up on farms of a certain era would have.
Huh.
But what we think of dinner as an evening meal really came about for the average people right after the Industrial Revolution because, people were then in factories and they really couldn't eat that big meal until they got home. So that's when we started having our significant meal of the day in the evening.
And we kept calling it dinner.
And we kept calling it dinner. Yeah.
So that's why so many people of a particular vintage will call dinner supper still.
Yes.
I got it. Okay,
exactly.
That's why. I understand. Wow, I did not know that I was coming to Cheezy Sales Cinema to learn that nugget of information. I did not know that actually blows my mind.
Yeah, you get cultural lessons, history lessons, all sorts of stuff here. Storytelling lessons.
So, storytelling lessons 100%. I mean, you being, the Sultan of SWAT when it comes to storytelling. Yeah, of course.
So, with that out of the way, the introduction to dinner in general, why not let everybody know what they're in store for tonight in terms of our programming?
So what we do, if you're new to the program, and of course, if you've joined us and you've been here before, we like to, we riff. We do it all in good fun. These are professionally produced. These were professionally at one point put on television, or they were put in cinemas, and instructional videos, or they were on television. And we're looking back at the way things used to be. So obviously, with the hindsight of 2020, it makes it rather comical. So what Jason and I will do is we will show a video, and while the video is playing, we will chime in with our 2 cents. But because this is the live, this is where you get to do the exact same thing too. Send us your comments, send us your questions, and as the program goes on, we involve you in the show too.
That's right. We can even bring it up right up on screen and, use that as a talking point. So to get specific, we've got 3 films for you tonight. One's a 2-parter. The earliest one we have goes back to 1949. It's about the amazing new step-saving kitchen. So we're going to talk about how people prepared food back then.
Wait till you see this kitchen.
Yeah. And then we have a wonderful 2-part 1960 short film called A Date for Dinner, which was all about, as America, moved into the 60s and was more prosperous, people going out to fancy restaurants and, needing to understand how to act. And then finally, we have a pure piece of 1970s cheese. Some of you may remember this program. We've got highlights of an episode of The Galloping Gourmet.
Yes.
Sexing up some lamb Apollo for us. So you'll want to stay tuned for that.
When Jason says sexing up lamb Apollo, he was sexing up lamb Apollo.
Yeah. So we've got all sorts of great video for you. And we're also going to be talking a little bit about our own experiences with the art of dinner. So Chris, why don't I start out with a question for you?
Okay.
What was mealtime and specifically dinner time like around your house? Was it fancy? Was it ever fancy? Did your parents have dinner parties? Anything like that?
Okay, I grew up in sort of a quasi-Italian household, so there was the good food we weren't allowed to touch, the kids weren't allowed to touch, and there was the guest food that my mom and my dad would keep in a special section of the fridge. Dinner was quiet, it was disciplined, and and it was on point. So there was not a lot of discussion. What discussion was had was stilted and at best. And I know that because I'd go to my friends' houses and some of them would have free for alls and stuff. But my dad he was. I mean, I'm lucky that he was like this, but he was a disciplinarian with manners. So everything had to be very, 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 very proper, very, very driven by manners and how you operated your knife and your fork and such. And I used to sit just to his right, and I took a lot of backs of forks or butter knives to the knuckles if I didn't cut my food with the right panache, and that is the way that I would handle my knife and fork. Hey, it turned out to be an amazing asset, but I wish he would have told me how important it would have been while he was knocking my knuckles around back then. How about you?
Yeah. My parents were a little less formal. I think the thing for most people, if they were looking back on our meal times, were, especially compared to today, the sort of stuff that we were eating. So, both my dad and my grandfather were hunters, so there was a lot of game. So pretty much, you name any animal from the forest, at some point I've probably eaten it.
Local forests?
Local forests, yes.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, bear, moose, venison, rabbit, all that stuff. And then the other thing was, on a regular basis, something you don't really see as much these days is, the organ meats and utility meats. So we would have liver once a week. We'd have heart once a week.
Oh.
Didn't get into the kidneys, but, we would have liver and heart on a regular basis. And it was always weird having somebody over and them asking what we were eating and, saying heart. And they're just like, oh my God, what is this?
Well, I'll be going home.
Pass me the left ventricle.
My mom and my dad both loved liver. My dad, when he used to cook turkey, used to actually cook, the insert you get in the turkey now in that little baggie, and you just take it and you take it and you put it in the compost bin. My dad used to fry all that shit up with potatoes and stuff and that was the only time when we would have giblets and I guess bits of heart and liver and stuff like that. He loved that. That was the only time we did it, unless we had just liver, and it was liver and onions with peas and stuff because my mom was English, so it was very, very English, you say.
I say yes.
Lots of salads. My mom did not ever have a salad until she met my dad, and then we had salads with everything. Salads had to start a meal, and then there'd be a little salad left over at the end of the meal. Ooh, sorry.
Yes.
Our Susan's first here. When I was growing up, we always had to clarify with our parents when they said be home for dinner. Do you mean lunch dinner or supper dinner? Oh, come on now, Susan. You're not of that ilk. Although I could see that if your parents were, I could absolutely. Do you mean? Sounds like you were being a smart ass to your parents.
Well, actually, I think Susan grew up on a farm, so dinner was probably still, yes.
Okay, I'll give it to her then. I'll give it to her.
Still very much
was being
a thing
cheeky.
back then.
Was it lunch dinner or is it supper dinner? I went to a friend's every liver Wednesday as a punishment or because you wanted to go. See, and I'm saying that because I love liver. I lived with liver on pizza, Jason. Oh, come on.
Yeah, I'll have to tell you that story. You finish that thought, Chris.
I was just gonna say when I lived for a year with my cousin in Barrie, and he hated liver. He still hates liver. Hates it. But my aunt found out I loved it, so she made it a staple maybe it was a Wednesday night. At least once a week we would have liver, and my cousin would just put the boots to me afterwards. He was a tough guy back then, and it's just, if I ever have to have liver again. Oh well, I love it. Yeah. I thought it was great. I still love liver.
Yes. So the liver on pizza comment refers to my dad.
What?
I know you like stories about my dad because my dad was an interesting guy. And sometimes he had problems with language, especially if people didn't speak English well. It's not like English was his second language. I mean, he grew up, he was British Canadian. But I remember coming home one time, my dad being on the phone, he was ordering a pizza, and I could hear him going, no liver on the pizza. No, No, I don't want no liver on the pizza. I'm thinking, what the heck's going on? So I go in the other room and I pick up the other phone, and I can hear this guy going, no sir, deliver, do you want deliver?
I would love your dad. That's like shadow boxing. You're never gonna win.
Yeah.
No liver. No liver. No, I don't mean. I mean the BJ Stewart.
Hello, BJ.
Wow.
Glad to have you on the show.
This is awesome. Oh my gosh, I remember vividly having boiled beets. Mom grows a huge garden. That's cool. I love beets. Beets are my jam. Beets, yeah. I love beets. With a jar of pickled beets on the table. Guess what I won't eat now? Is that because they're grown in the shade, BJ? I'm sorry. That's a paleo crack. No, I didn't eat as many. I didn't eat pickled beets a lot. But I'll be honest with you, I still love pickled beets. I have no problem with them. I will eat them, no problem. But I love fresh beets. I love steamed beets and even raw beets chopped up and put in a salad.
There we go. And before
it's like eating dirt, but red.
True. Yeah. And let's say hi to some of our regulars here. Robert Ryan, of course. Everybody loves Rob. Everybody's saying hi to Rob.
Hi, Rob.
And also, we've got Ken as
well.
We
got Ken Cohen's son. Hello.
So welcome everybody who's joining us. And so why don't we go into what? Sorry, Chris.
I'm sorry. I know that BJ's coming back and she's going to take a crack right at my Adam's apple about something to do with kale or literally any of the other foibles that I have.
What is your foible about kale?
No, it's just I loved it too much. And there was one time we all worked at the same place of work, and it was a birthday celebration, and one of the other employees that worked there and I share the exact same birth date. So BJ, when I worked with BJ, I don't know why she doesn't do catering, because she can cook like a fiend. She does everything all organic and super ultra healthy, but she used to put on the best birthday parties for people, right? She had a birthday cake for one girl, and she gave me a birthday kale. It was a head of kale. There's the steak of salad. I got a birthday kale. Legendary. Yeah, it was. So I'm sitting there with my bouquet of kale, and the other girl, one of our writers, she had this beautiful cake. Everybody ate the cake. I took the kale home, and BJ knows this. I steamed that kale, half of it, because it was a massive thing, and the rest of it I put in a salad. Yep, it is. It's a steak of salad. Steak of lettuce.
There we go. And you know what? This reminds us. There's just so many different ways that people have dinner. So many different foods. So many different cultural artifacts around that. Oh,
I was just telling this story to my yoga teacher. There's another yoga place that I will be laughed right out of. Yep.
You've already laughed out of a few, are you?
Yeah, I have been, yeah.
Okay. Well,
because I don't get it. I don't get the yoga thing.
Why don't we transition to our first short film of the night here? And this comes from 1960, and it's all about, how to deal with, going to a fancy restaurant on a dinner date, particularly back then, because, there's still kind of a lot of rules. But back in 1960, let's face it, you were expected to pretty much conform. And there were some very rigid rules, particularly in terms of, what the boys or the guys could do, what the girls could do, who spoke to whom. So why don't we get into that and just see how difficult it was to have a dinner date back in 1960.
And this is just part one.
Part one. Kimberly Clark.
Don't they make Kleenex?
And napkins. This is brought to you by the people who give you napkins.
Oh, is this Miss Taylor? Well, I'm Eddie
It's
Williams.
good that he got the tie to match the phone.
Do you know where I can
this guy could be 15 or 50. It's hard to know back then.
It's really tough to know because they all had haircuts as though any second they were going to get drafted into the war effort.
Exactly. He's ready to go off to Vietnam already.
I've got it. Thanks a lot, Miss Taylor.
He's also got a pinky ring. What sort of teenager wears a pinky ring?
That guy was way ahead of his time. He was so freaking cool.
If those skirts were any longer, you could dust the floor with them.
So, Kathy, I told Mom, if he isn't going to tell her who he is, I'm certainly not going to wait for whoever he is to call again.
Someone's got an attitude.
Oh, somebody's pretty
Hello?
high on himself.
Oh,
Oh, hi, Linda. This is Eddie Williams.
That's quite the
Next.
Boy,
stance.
are you hard to get a hold of. Called you 3 times last week.
Probably got his hand out of his pocket.
calling. You never left your name.
Oh, I'm sorry. I wanted to know if you'd like to go out to dinner with me Saturday.
Saturday?
I would,
This
but you didn't
Saturday?
leave your damn name.
Well, yeah, that is if you're not
This Saturday, the
We
day
could
after
make it some other
Friday and
time.
before Sunday.
Oh, no, I'm not busy. I'd love to go.
I'm a social
Well.
pariah.
Pick you up about 7 then?
I'll be ready.
Fine. Goodbye.
Bye.
Hi. I'm glad we don't talk like that anymore.
Me too.
Yes, sir.
He's already got a commanding officer.
But I've never been out on a dinner date before.
Who hit him on
I'm
the
just
back of the
scared
head.
to death. Why? You know, check rooms and waitresses and ordering and
All that stuff
it's
horror
so
movies are made out of.
complicated.
Check
I
rooms,
just know I'll do
waitresses.
everything wrong. And
Ordering.
Eddie will never ask me to go in.
Silly. There's nothing to going out for dinner.
Not for you. If I had
She
an
has a
aunt, well,
Buffalo
I'd know how
accent.
to
Did you
act,
notice
too.
that? She probably goes to
does?
Taps
She does.
Friendly
The
Market.
restaurant's closed on Mondays. I'll ask Aunt Kate over tonight, and we'll ask her about all these things that are bothering you.
Well, I asked her.
Besides, the folks are going out, so this'll be sort of fun. But come on over after dinner.
After.
After.
We're going to go to Lackawanna.
Someone say something.
No, somebody... Oh, see, there's a Kimberly Clark box
Yep.
right there on the left.
There's Linda now.
They're
She's
making
really
centerpieces
upset about
out of
it,
their
Aunt Kate.
napkins.
That's why I asked you
Yeah.
to bring menus.
Mr. Rogers is a young man.
Oh, look at that.
Hi, Linda.
Well, for heaven's sake. You staying home for a change?
Well, I'm always home, you know that. And I know why you're here. Big
Boy,
day
that
coming
conversation went nowhere.
Yeah.
Maybe.
up, huh? Maybe. Well, Aunt Kate and Kathy are
Another
ready
guy
to-
with a hand in his pocket. What's up this?
Why don't they just stop with the small talk? They all suck
Aunt
at
Kate,
it.
you remember my friend Linda Taylor?
Why, yes, how do you do, Linda? I'm happy
Aunt
to
Kate
see you.
looks
Thank
like
you,
a
Mrs.
fox.
Jefferson. It's nice to see you again.
I understand
Everybody
you have a
acts
big
like
date
robots.
Saturday.
Yes, I do.
And Kathy tells me you're a little upset.
Well,
Did she move
Oh,
into a
Linda,
parallel
there's
dimension?
really
It looks
no
like
need
she's
to be
suddenly
upset
a
over how
ghost
you
now
do that.
compared to
She
everybody
does.
else.
May I ask you something?
sure, Mrs. Jefferson.
Whoa, where am I?
Were you self-conscious when Jerry helped you with your coat?
Golly, no. He always does. When he's here.
And because you're comfortable with him, you're not self-conscious.
Jerry in the
Isn't
background.
that right?
Well, it threw me the first time he did it. Really, Jerry. Go on, Mrs. Jefferson.
Well, there's the secret right there, Linda. The more often you do something, the easier it is.
Yeah,
Now,
oh,
what
I'm
we're
gonna
going
not.
to
Yeah,
do
I'm not
is
touching
practice
that.
right here
No.
with you, Kathy, and Jerry. First, we'll set the table.
Why didn't I get practice
I'll need
runs
your
for
help,
my
Kathy.
dates?
You get the placemats, and Jerry, you get the menus. They're in the living room.
Because we had evolved as a species by then. These people are barely out of hunter-gatherer.
Let's practice from the beginning now. This will be the hat check stand. You take over there, Kathy.
Kathy,
and
you be the
Linda,
hat rack.
You and Jerry put your coats on and enter from the
You be
kitchen.
the hat rack. Everybody put your coats on Kathy.
The gentleman holds the door for the girl and lets her precede him into the restaurant. They both go to the hat check stand where it is proper, if the girl desires, for her to check her coat. Or she can keep her coat and drape it over her
None
chair
of
back
this
after she is
applies
seated.
today. None.
Or
You
she
wait
can
at
choose
the
a better
entrance of
coat
the
if she
dining
finds
room
one in
for
a
the
hanger.
hostess to guide you to your table. The hostess goes first, then the girl, and the man follows.
Jerry afterwards
Usually the
asked,
hostess will indicate
"Can
the
I
chair
write,
that provides the
does this count
most
as a real
desirable
date?"
view for the
But
girl.
I'd love to say that I went on a date with you.
Yeah.
Sit down slowly to give your escort a chance to slip your chair up to the table. If you're still too far away from the table, rise slightly so he can push the chair closer. Don't just plop in the chair
if you
and
close
expect
your
him to
eyes
put
and you don't
and
know
the
what you're
chair to the
watching,
table.
it's
He may not be a
really-
weightlifter.
You tell her, Aunt Kay. Good old Aunt Kay.
Where would we be without one mature adult in the house during that dinner session? So that was uncomfortable. We've done a few of these now that have taken place in the 40s and 50s, and it's amazing. It's almost as if they did come from a different planet, and they now had to be taught social etiquette in so many different instances that we've covered on Cheezy Sale Cinema to date.
Yeah, it's interesting because when I'm researching these films, these type of films end pretty much like around 1962, 1963. These films that basically kind of teach you how to live or teach you manners, all
Right.
sorts of basic stuff and things that we would be considered kind of invasive today to have some film tell you, how to take care of this or take care of that or, just go out on a dinner date, right? And interestingly enough, this goes back to Freud's daughter, who was actually a really big part of the American educational system back then.
Oh, I didn't know that. Wow.
Her theory and Freud's theory was the fact that, if you help people conform, they would be happier. So the whole idea was mental health through doing everything exactly the same as everybody else does.
Oh, that's
so that's
actually
one of the
opposite
reasons
to
why,
mental health.
yeah. And that's why the 50s and early 60s were so oppressive for people, which is interesting.
Oh my gosh. That's and another now we just dove into Psych 101 on Cheezy Cell Cinema. Holy smokes. This is a great episode. I'm actually glad I'm here.
Learning a lot. So
Really learning a lot. I did not know that. Wow.
yeah. So were you intimidated going to your first fancy restaurant?
Oh my gosh, I can't even tell you. You mean like just like with somebody else and not my folks?
Yeah, or actually, an even better question: Did you go to fancy restaurants with your folks when you were a kid? Because I actually didn't. My parents wouldn't go.
We
with
went
kids.
to fancy-ish restaurants. Yeah. Not like my parents still like to go out, but they were like, okay, we can't leave the kids home all the time. I guess we'll take them along. So about as fancy a restaurant we would go to would be a steakhouse, but just as long as that steakhouse had a salad bar.
Salads again.
Yeah, exactly. So we could line up there, and I used to sideboard my salads. But anyway, I've been doing that forever.
Sideboard your salad. Can you explain that?
Okay, sideboards. It's like I would put so much on my plate that somebody once commented I needed sideboards to keep it all in because it was spilling over the edge. So we didn't go to fancy restaurants, but we went to fancy-ish. So my dad would never take us to Ponderosa unless it was a hockey team and he wanted to do something that he could afford to do everybody. There it is. This is the Ponderosa Fancy. Yeah. My dad would never go to Ponderosa. We would go to, I don't know does anybody remember Crock and Block?
Oh my goodness, there's a name from the
You
past.
see what I mean? Yeah. Crock and Block was, so there was a 3-tier steakhouse system in where I grew up. There was the what was it? The Keg was at the top, Kelsey's was in the middle, and then there was Crock and Block. And Crock and Block was the family-friendly version of Kelsey's. So we would do Crock and Block again because it had a salad bar. But my dad hated fast food, so he never took us to McDonald's. I would always be my mom that would sneak us off to a Burger King or to a McDonald's or something like that. But my dad was always like, "There's fresher food at home." And I'm not going to a restaurant that doesn't have wine. So there you go.
Yeah, I mean, parents love the Crock and Block.
There it is. See,
Yeah,
I loved it too.
With my folks, I think the fanciest we got was Steak and Burger. I don't know if you remember Steak.
I don't, but it just sounds funny
Yeah.
the way you say it. The way you steak and burger. I was like, okay.
Yeah, it was to call it a steakhouse. I don't know. It was like Ponderosa, but I think it was licensed. I think you could have alcohol. My dad wouldn't eat at Ponderosa because they didn't serve alcohol there.
See, my dad liked his wine, so if they don't serve wine, I'm not. Or yeah, there it is, Steak and Burger.
Steak and Burger.
Yep, can remember Steak and Burger. Why do I not know Steak and Burger?
Yeah, it was a very Ontario thing, and maybe you were out traveling the world back then.
Not in the 70s. Well,
Yeah.
late 70s days. We spent some time. Steak and Burger just sounds so American. When my dad got transferred around an awful lot, we hit some of the fancier places, but that was only because the company was picking it up. So they would say, okay, we need everybody to assemble at dinner. We're gonna meet at this restaurant, and there would be the adults on one side, and there'd be the kids over at the other side. So, but still, I was mowing down on whatever we were allowed to get. Ponderosa, ick. The steak was choice cut from the forehead.
Oh, Gristle. Yeah.
I love it. It's true, though.
It's true.
It's true.
Yeah.
Because it was thin and it was gristle and it was like trying to eat through tree bark.
It was. Now, the interesting thing for me, the closest I got to a fancy restaurant was crank calling Alan Hale's Lobster Barrel when I was about 13 years old. So the guy who played the skipper on Gilligan's Island had this restaurant in LA, Alan Hale's Lobster Barrel, as you can see.
Right.
So I had a friend of mine who'd gone down there and eaten there and said, Alan Hale's actually in the restaurant. He answers the phone. He walks around the tables,
What?
So, yeah. So
I would have loved to have known this.
After I found that out, I found myself at my cousin's place one Saturday night. He was about 3 years younger. I was like 13. I guess he was 10. And we were allowed to stay up late because, of course, there's a three-hour difference between Toronto and LA where the restaurant is.
Oh, my God. You called him from Ontario?
So, yes. So I called Alan Hale's Lobster Barrel. My aunt had two phones, so my cousin was on the other phone. And it didn't disappoint because Alan Hale not only answered, but here's how he answered. Hey there, little buddy. This is Alan Hale's Lobster Barrel. So it's just like, oh my God, this is great. So I had to have an excuse to keep him on the phone, to keep him talking. So I was asking him, what sort of fish do you have on your menu? What sort of steaks? So I probably kept him on the phone for about a minute and a half, 2 minutes. I think the call was probably about $15 or something back then.
It was probably more than that, Jason.
Oh yeah,
more than that.
my aunt was more than a little angry.
Do you think?
That I had crank called Alan Hale's Lobster Barrel.
Yeah. Alan Hale's Lobster Barrel aside, you called Los Angeles, which I'm assuming was probably in the 70s when you did that.
I think it was 1980, 81.
Okay, it was early 80s, very early 80s, but still. Long distance calling from Toronto to Hamilton for I don't know, 10 minutes would have cost $15.
That's true. It was very expensive.
Called Los Angeles.
I called Los Angeles just for 90 seconds with Alan Hale.
That's amazing. Susan says, I was taught formal dining manners at 4-H. I'm going to ask about that. If we were going to a conference, which would always have a formal dinner to open and close, we would get taught beforehand how things work. Okay, Jason, maybe you can help me out with this. What's 4-H?
So 4-H is a youth club, and it's specifically a youth club for people in rural areas. So it revolves around agriculture. So, shearing sheep, showing animals, that sort of stuff. But there's also things like public speaking components. I know in the public speaking world, I know a number of people who got their start doing 4-H speaking competitions, stuff like that. But it was very much a kind of rural American, rural Canadian thing.
So what does 4-H stand for? Is it four somethings that begin with the letter H?
Yeah, they're four values or principles that begin with the letter H.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. I'm people that go to finishing schools for stuff like that. I admire. So, it's better that than get your hands wrapped by a back of a fork like my dad.
There you go. So do you have a fancy restaurant that you really like, or a favorite restaurant, or just, one of those dining experiences that just kind of pop into your head and go, yeah, that was like pretty awesome?
You know what? I spent a number of years working on cruise ships, and I would say that the dining experience on the cruise ships was about as fancy as I have ever had. That was ridiculous because the serving staff are trained, like they have to be the best of the best, or they're simply not servers, and that's the end of it. You want a job, you got to be the best of the best. If you're not the best of the best, you're not a server. And the drop in pay between server and assistant server and those and like a cleaner was ridiculous. Like it was terrible, the drop in pay. So they put on shows, they knew your names. Now I very rarely was in the dining room because I was crew, but the times that I was, and then when I became, higher in management and was promoting these guys, it was unbelievable. I loved it. And the quality of the food was second to none. It was awesome. Very cool.
You? Actually, we're going to mention that in a moment, but here's the 4-H's.
Oh, here it is.
Head, heart, hands, and health.
Okay. I like it.
I was going to wait to do this after the next segment, but you know what? Since you already talked about, your cruise ship experience, I'll talk to you sort of about my kind of long-term fancy dining experience. And it was at Cambridge University in England. I went there for a summer term as an adult. And this is a school that is frequented by royalty and obviously people of wealth and taste and that
man,
sort of thing.
okay.
So as you
I've
can
never even
imagine,
touched that.
when you're living at the university and they're used to providing food and wine for those type of people with those type of tastes, it's pretty good. So I actually still have one of the menus, because they would actually give us a menu, and that's the crest of the college, Clare College, which was founded, I think, in 1267 or something like that.
Oh my God.
And yeah, you've got your choice of wines over here, and you've got the menu, and I've actually got a close-up of the menu here. So there we go. That was our meal for the evening. And this wasn't particularly special. This is every night we'd have something like this. I don't even know what half of these dishes are, even though obviously I ate them at the time. But yeah, and you have, waiters who are probably all named Jeeves, walking around with the long coats and everything else. And it's quite the experience.
Oh my God. I've seen that in movies. I have never experienced that before. Oh man.
Yeah. And, one of the big challenges is always when you sit down and you have all that cutlery, what exactly do you do with it?
Oh, that scares me. That scares me.
Why don't we answer that question right now with part 2 of A Date for Dinner?
Let's do it.
A restaurant will provide more silver than you usually find on your dinner table.
I get freaked out whenever I see that much silver. It's like,
so
I don't know what to do.
less
There's
work
so
from the
much.
outside in
I need
There's
a
a
knife
lot.
and a fork.
as the courses are served. There
See
is
what is it
usually
here?
a soup spoon,
Okay.
Right?
a coffee spoon, and a dessert spoon.
Ah, that's what that
Then
is.
a butter knife and knife to cut your meat.
But the knife to cut your meat looks
Now,
like a
the
butter
other
knife.
side,
It's
you
not
have your
any
salad
sharper.
fork
It is a butter
and
knife.
your
Look at
regular
it.
fork. Naturally, you will carry a small purse that rests easily in your lap because you never put your purse on the table.
Apparently not.
You immediately unfold your table napkin, not all the way, just halfway, so the fold is toward you.
And you immediately forget the purse is in your lap
Then
until you
look at
stand
the
up
menu.
and all of your
You will
personal
have
contents
ample
are
time to
spilled all
study
over the floor.
menu, and you may ask about any dish.
Hey, is
has
that a
name
picture
you.
of another guy?
These are nothing to be confused about once you become familiar
Is that a
with them.
lipstick?
Notice that there are 2 price lists, one for a la carte and one for table d'hote, which is the complete dinner.
A table
The
d'hote?
left side item,
I guess so.
which means you receive only the entree portion of the table d'hote. The entree is
What
the
is a
main
table
course,
d'hote?
and a la carte includes only
whole
main
table? I
course,
don't know.
Potatoes, salad, bread and butter, and sometimes a vegetable. If you order a la carte, the
I never used to be
appetizer,
confused
coffee,
by a
and dessert
menu.
cost
Now
extra.
I am.
Now I am.
The right side of the menu is for the table d'hote. This costs more.
Doesn't say why.
Deluxe,
You will usually
table
find
d'hote,
several appetizers
a la carte.
listed
Why
to
is there
choose
more
from.
French in this American
Some of
ad
them
than
you
in
drink.
Canada?
Others will be served with
Look
their
at those
own spoons or
appetizers.
cocktail
Chopped
forks.
chicken livers, tomato juice. Yeah.
If there is no
Giblet
price beside
barley
it, that
soup.
means the
Giblet
appetizer is
barley-
included in the
Bleh.
price of the dinner. And
I like the
choose
French
one.
fried jumbo shrimp and
If
snappy
you choose
sauce.
one that has a price
Snappy,
beside
it's
it,
a snappy
the cost of it will be
sauce.
added even
Or
to
the
a
Dover
complete dinner.
sole and saute manure.
After the appetizer, the waitress will bring soup. Soup du jour, translated literally, means soup of the day. And
Oh,
it's
yes, it
perfectly
does.
all right to ask, what is the soup du jour?
And the waiter
You might not
will
want to order
say,
soup
hey,
of
it's
the
soup of
kind
the
you don't
day.
care for.
And you'll go, ha, that was funny.
After choosing your entree or meat course,
So
you will
this
have
is
a
the
choice of
1960s salad, half a
So
head
make
of
up your mind
cheap
whether you
lettuce
want
and a
French,
couple
oil
pieces
and
of
vinegar,
tomato.
garlic, or Roquefort.
When was romaine lettuce
Avoid using a
invented?
knife to cut your salad. It's
What the
preferable
heck
to
is
use
this?
a fork.
This is the best. So they took a whole head of
You also
iceberg
have a
lettuce,
choice of vegetables.
cut it in quarters, and
And
threw
you
a
will be
chunk of
asked
lettuce
how you
down.
want your potatoes. Usually baked, whipped,
We need more
French
cream
fried,
corn
or
on the
cottage
menu in our
fried.
fancy restaurants today.
I like this one. Isn't actually real
You
cream
cut
corn.
one
It's cream
bite-sized
style
portion of meat
corn.
Ah.
And finish eating it
You
before
see?
cutting more.
Yeah.
It's not orange juice. It's orange drink.
It's an incredible simulation.
If there is gravy left and you would like to eat it, you may do so by
Lick
putting
your
a
plate.
small piece of bread down on the gravy and then eating it with your fork, as if it were any other helping on your plate.
Well, how would you eat it otherwise? Put it in your eye?
Most people prefer to wait
Scoop
and
it
have
with a
coffee
spoon,
with their dessert.
like a soup.
When you've stirred the sugar and cream into your coffee, be sure to put the spoon on the saucer. It's bad manners to leave your spoon in the cup.
It's also bad manners to
Same
hang the
applies
spoon from your
after you've
nose like
finished
your
your
crazy
dessert.
uncle used to.
If it is the kind served in a
Hey,
sherbet
everybody,
dish,
look at this. I
which
can
has
make
its
it
own
stick.
serving plate, like ice cream, fruit, or gelatin. Your escort will give your order to the waitress. And a well-trained waitress seldom if ever asks the girl a direct question.
Because what would the girl know about
Should,
food?
However, common courtesy demands that you
Why would
answer.
the girl want to answer
And you
for
want oil
herself?
and
Why,
vinegar
that's
dressing on
crazy
your salad?
talk.
Yes. Our oil and vinegar has a little garlic in it. Will that be all right?
Oh, well, I'll have the French dressing then.
2 with French dressing.
Apparently they're turned off by the garlic.
Well,
After the waitress takes your
apparently
order,
these
she
two have
leaves.
got some
In
after-dinner
the meantime,
plans.
you
Perhaps.
might like to have one of the rolls the waitress or busboy brought when you first sat down. Always break off a small
Wow,
portion
that
of
bread
the
roll is like the size of a
Butter
car
and eat
tire.
that before breaking
It
off
does. It
more.
looks like a
You
spare.
never cut a roll with your knife. And if an accident occurs, it's not the end of the world. Anyone can have this happen. If you
No,
drop
I don't know that I've
Yeah.
ever seen
something,
anyone
leave
throw
the
a
item
bun
on the
across a
floor and let one
restaurant.
of the restaurant employees pick it up later. In the meantime, your escort will wait until your waitress
In the
is within
meantime,
easy
just
hearing
look at it.
distance
Yeah.
to say,
Joke
Waitress?
about it. Watch everybody else
Yes, sir.
walk over it
We dropped a
because
fork
you
here.
don't
Could
pick
we
it
have
up.
Another one, please?
Of course, sir.
At no time does he raise his voice nor tap a glass with silverware to attract her attention.
Nor does he laugh
If he
and point to
can't
the
locate
silverware and yell,
waitress, the
"Loser!"
hostess will notice and come to help.
Sir.
When you've finished your meal, you may blot your lips lightly with your napkin.
They're still talking to the girl,
Avoid
right?
staining the table napkin with lipstick.
No, I think the boy
Do
now.
not refold the napkin.
They
Simply
may
place it
blot your
unfolded
lips.
beside your plate. Although a minimum of makeup repair is permitted at the table, your date probably would prefer to
Is
confine
that a
all
book?
face
Looked like she had a
fixing to the
book in
powder
her
Yeah.
purse.
room, in which case you say,
Will you excuse me, please?
Sure.
She took her purse. She's not coming back,
Yeah.
buddy.
your escort will take care of the check.
You got the check.
Leaving a
You're
tip
done.
for the
Yeah,
waitress
she left
equal
just
to
before the check
perhaps
came.
15% of the bill.
Hey, the 15% rule still applies. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
He does
I thought it
not
was a
tip
new
the
thing.
hat check girl until you retrieve your coats. Then he may leave 15 cents or so for each coat.
15 cents a coat.
That's all there is to it, Linda. Easy, isn't it? It's all in knowing how.
I'll get
Yeah,
it.
you can say that about a lot of things.
Yep.
It's not so difficult, Mrs. Jefferson. I think practicing this way is a good idea. And Jerry,
We can go to the best restaurant in
Well, you're sure
Tanawanda.
a big eater.
Oh,
In Tanawanda.
the phone call's for you, Linda. Me?
What?
Thank you.
Now remember, she's at her friend's house to do this
Yeah,
whole thing.
exactly. Yeah.
Okay, sis, give me back my quarters.
Hello? Eddie, how did you know I was home?
You're not at
What?
home. You're at your friend's
Oh.
place. You've
Well,
been there
wherever
for
you
the
wanna
past
go
20
is all right
minutes.
with me.
Wow, she's not only a newbie at dating, she's
Oh,
an idiot.
golly, I'd love to go. I'll be ready. Goodbye.
Maybe she's just a little slow. But thanks to Aunt Kay, now she knows what to do on a dinner date.
On a dinner date. Yeah, that was on a dinner date. Nobody calls it a dinner date anymore. So let's go get something to eat. Let's go get something to eat. Like even that decorum has been ended in this generation.
Absolutely. So we got some comments to get back to here.
Oh, you've been saving them up. Eddie was clearly a stalker. Yes.
Yeah, he was calling her at her friend's place, and she's like, "Yeah, how did you know I was home?" It's just like, "Don't you realize you're somewhere else? He's found you."
But that's also Eddie, who was, I tried calling you 3 times and you never answered. Stop calling me. You call once, stop calling. How do you avoid having a tablecloth look like you have strained all your food through it? Always confused me. That
Well-
still confuses me.
Well, maybe one thing you have to do when you go to a restaurant is to actually bring a strainer with you, so you don't need to use the tablecloth.
Better idea. My favorite restaurant, says Rob, Eastside Mario's. It's not fancy, but it's reasonably priced. The food is decent, and the servers are very friendly. It's my happy place. Okay, so Robert, one thing that I used to love back in the 90s, early to mid 90s anyway, was at East. We used to go to Eastside Mario's, bada boom, bada bing, and they used to have the big barrels full of peanuts. And the thing we used to love to do is we'd go into the bar, and they would encourage you to use your hands and fill a basket. Remember this, Jason?
Yep.
Fill a basket full of peanuts. Eat the peanuts with your hands, COVID-19. Chuck all the peanut shells down on the floor. peanut allergies of the 21st century, and then they would sweep it and you would just rinse and repeat. Those were awesome days.
You know what? They were, and it's funny how striking it is now. Compared to back then, we didn't actually think about it, but it's interesting. I actually do have a memory about that place, being there with a couple of friends, and this female friend I was there with in particular went up to this guy that we knew who was at the bar, and he was casually eating the peanuts, and she goes, "Oh, you really shouldn't eat those. You'll get cancer. They're irradiated." And he goes, "I smoke." She goes, "Oh, okay." She just walked away.
I smoke.
Don't
worry, I'm ahead of you.
Yeah. The peanuts will kill me. The cigarettes will kill me first.
The peanuts were irradiated? Was that at a Eastside Mario's in Chernobyl?
Yeah, I don't think it was Eastside Mario's in particular, but there was this rumor going around that to keep peanuts fresh, they irradiated them or something. Just like some of the crazy health stuff that goes around today. But it was just a classic line. I smoke.
That was also when you could still smoke in the restaurants too.
That's true.
Which I did not like, but then thank goodness that's gone.
So we talked about bringing a strainer.
Robert, I actually do bring a strainer to Eastside Mares to strain my spaghetti sauce. I don't like the consistency of the onions. Well, sorry, Robert. I love the nerd emoji. He's like, seriously.
Can you imagine what Aunt Kay would think of that, Chris?
No. Aunt Kay was like, and one shall not ever bring a strainer to a dinner date.
I was actually wondering when she was opening her purse whether she was going to take a strainer out, but it turned out it was makeup.
Alan, peanut shells on the floor were not a good mix for bands with pyrotechnics. I bet you that's true.
Hadn't thought about that.
The thing was, there was too many bands with pyrotechnics on indoor venues back then.
Oh, yes. I remember that well.
Yes.
We also have a comment from Ken that will lead into another story of mine.
All right. I was always impressed. Oh, is this Honest Ed's, I guess? Is that what we're talking about? Honest Ed's on King Street. That seemed fancy. You know what? It did seem fancy because it had the big flashing lights out front.
Well, and you know what? It was actually those restaurants, because there was a seafood restaurant, a Chinese restaurant, a steak restaurant, and they were actually pretty nice restaurants.
I forgot about that.
And they were located in the theater district of Toronto, by the Royal Alexandria and Princess of Wales theaters.
I went to the. Did they have a pasta one too, or maybe it was a steakhouse I went to?
Yeah, they did.
What was the one that was underground? The one that was
a pasta
below?
one. I think that was the Italian one.
That was the one we went to.
But yeah, there were a whole bunch of them. So this is my dinner date. Well, not really a fail, but it's a funny story. So I'm there with she's now my ex-wife, but she was my fiance at the time. We were going out to the theater. We were all dressed up. I was in my best suit. We're at, one of Ed's restaurants, and we have this couple right next to us, and the tables were fairly close together. And the couple, I don't know, maybe they're 65, 70. And the guy was a little clueless. The old guy was a little clueless, and he was, he had this rice dish, this shrimp and rice dish, and he was shoving this into his mouth, and there was a lot of pepper in it. So he sneezed with this mouthful of rice, and it went all over me.
That's a scatter bomb.
Just boom, like all over me, my face, my jacket, my shirt. So I'm like, pick up my napkin and I'm dabbing myself off. He is totally oblivious. He has no idea what he's just done, but his wife, just this look of horror on his wife's face, and she doesn't know, like, she didn't actually say anything, but she's mouthing the words. As I'm picking all these pieces of rice.
Another man's rice
off me, yeah. Not exactly the way to be the cool guy on a date, is to get rice sneezed all over you.
Because you know that's the lasting memory.
Of course.
The next date, we better make sure we don't go anywhere where there's allergies. Okay, you know what? Enough. Enough reminding me of it.
There we go. We got another comment here.
Lori, we had a dog. He hated carrots. If mom gave him leftover stew, he would leave the carrots neatly at his bowl. That is a well-trained dog. If you looked at my little brother's plate, he left his carrots the exact same way. That is a well-trained boy. Who was likely trained by the dog.
Yes.
Oh, that's amazing.
Indeed. So do you have any embarrassing dinner stories, dinner date stories, Chris, or were they all pretty good?
I don't. Oh, they were not. Okay. Who my wife, when we were dating, we would go to. I just remember she bought me, because we didn't have a lot of money, but so she bought me this really nice Ralph Lauren polo shirt. We'd go to like Marshalls or the Ralph Lauren outlet store is what we used to go to in Old San Juan. And she bought me this shirt, really nice shirt, loved it. White little logo on it, back when I used to like that kind of stuff. And for some reason, every time I wore that shirt at any restaurant with her, it didn't matter where in the world we were, I would soak that in whatever I was eating. Something would freaking go wrong. You know what I did, Jason? I kid you not. I remember, I don't remember what country it is. It could have been Spain. I think it was in Spain, and I dumped like seafood all over it. I took the shirt off at one point, not in the restaurant, when we got back to wherever we were staying, and I said, the shirt is cursed, and I threw it in the garbage.
I was curious, were the local dogs following you home and the cats and stuff?
Constantly. It was embarrassing. It was terrible. No, that's I don't know what happened. She buys me this shirt. I think she got it for my birthday or something like that. And the very first day we take it out, well, all of us are like sitting around this great big table by a beach or something. Bam! Down goes whatever, mustard, ketchup, relish, everything all over my shirt. And I'm like, well, that's not coming out of eight. And I mean, this is cloud white, this shirt. Next time we go out, I think it was Thai sauce that destroyed. Every time we went out, I would ruin that shirt again. So I just finally said, and that's enough of that shirt. It is cursed, the cursed shirt. It's the cursed shirt. I can't keep doing this.
There we go. So
God knows why she stayed with me. I have no clue. I'm such an idiot.
So from the foibles of the formal dinner, let's backtrack a little bit and look at how farm families dealt with, making food back in 1949, because the war's ended and they're creating these new houses and they're creating these new kitchens, and they want a kitchen now that actually saves some time for the wife. So believe it or not, she can actually eat with her family. So let's have a look. A step-saving kitchen, something important enough to spend, probably what would be $100,000 today on a movie to talk about it.
Saving a step in the kitchen. All right, I can't wait to see what this is about.
Were developed for people just like you. People who are interested in having
is she wearing camouflage?
Ideas in design.
Boy, she really does disappear into the wall, doesn't she? Of course, so does he now.
That must be spent.
It's kind of a rainbow of blue, gray, and bald.
Have an old-fashioned kitchen. You know the amount.
Why does this look like a Monty Python skit where all the guys are dressed up as women?
From one corner of the kitchen to the other.
That nod is what passes for intimacy in a relationship these days.
Doesn't she look like Jeffrey Tambor? She's got a very Jeffrey Tambor look about her.
From the Larry Sanders Show at Arrested Development. Yeah, Jeffrey Tambor in drag.
That's why we've developed
Oh my God.
For example, we have learned that more counter space is required for the making of cookies and bread than for any other mixing operation.
Well, what about mixing concrete? You need a truck for that.
At least 36 inches, and that 42 inches is
way
a
to
more
keep the camera
desirable
steady.
length for the mixing counter.
It's like Blair Witch Project.
Different kitchen jobs have been studied.
Wow.
To determine the most
is that a special effect or
working height
triplets?
For each.
It's like a
To obtain
sci-fi.
different heights in our kitchen,
We are
use
all
pull-out
androids.
It's the Stepford Wives.
We designed revolving corner cupboards.
Now we're going to
make
save
the
a step.
greatest use of available space. These bring things out in the open, so they're easily seen and reached.
Except for the ones in the back.
Yep,
Models
never
for
find
many
those, and they
features
end
were
up
made and
way beyond
experimented.
expiry date.
Some were used, some discarded.
Jim, this birdhouse sucks.
Birds can't get out. When they do, they fall
Good
out
lighting is
and die.
important in the kitchen. To obtain this, we developed a design for a homemade fixture.
Nothing
which
makes
would
food
enable
look
the
more
farmer to
appetizing
use
than
modern
fluorescent light.
lighting At minimum
That's
cost.
right. Fluorescent light makes the
A
whole
shallow
world
wooden
come alive.
trough, in which we mounted 4 40-watt fluorescent tubes, was hung 8 inches from the ceiling, above
So
the
you can
work
feel
centers.
genuinely like you're in
And
prison.
finally, our kitchen began to take form. The units for each activity were put together,
to secure.
So, Chris, can you
My.
imagine the
orderly,
sound of
secure,
dropping a sack of marbles and having them scatter on that floor? The echo.
Oh my God, that'd be like dropping them in a grocery store in the produce aisle.
Food preservation.
That is not a very decorative kitchen.
No. Still big on the blue, though.
As a convenient place for the telephone.
It's a wonderful place to
and
watch
for
your
making
radio.
out menus and market orders. We also included a planning center.
To watch
The
your
planning
radio.
desk is actually
Oh my
a
God, you
drop
sounded
leaf
150
table on
years old. That was
casters,
fantastic.
Which can become a
I like to
tea
sit
cart
at my table
or
so I
an
can
extra
watch the
work or
radio.
dining table. By placing a large picture window across the end of the kitchen, we gained the benefit
Is this
of
like the
natural
Designing
light
Brothers,
over
but like
all work surfaces.
70 years ago?
Apparently.
Since most women prefer to work from right to left, we
Do they?
placed
I've
the
never
mixing
asked a woman
center
about that.
In the right leg
I
of
don't
the
know
U,
that we should ask a woman
between
where
the
they like to work in the
refrigerator
kitchen,
and the
Jason,
think
if we
center.
want to save our face.
That's true.
Besides, I kind
in
of
the
like the
mixing
kitchen.
center,
I don't want everybody the hell out
as
of my
in all
kitchen. I
other work
love my
areas,
kitchen.
We planned storage facilities.
If her
to take
dress was
care
made out of
all
like a
the
silvery
supplies
material, she could
and
be
the
an alien in
equipment
Star Trek.
used in that center.
Again, more with the
Space ordinarily
sci-fi.
wasted
I
is
bet you she's got a
utilized to
double and a
advantage
triplet
by these
someplace else,
built-in
too.
bins for
Probably.
flour and sugar.
Oh, look at this.
Another advantage is
She's
that
got
they
the bulk
eliminate
barn in her kitchen.
canisters, which take up counter surface. Behind the door,
The
a
only problem with
container
those is that,
holding 40 pounds
any
of flour
insect can get
feeds
in.
into the smaller bin below. In the cooking and serving center are all of the supplies and equipment used at the range.
So she's
Oh,
got
here's
them in a pot already, and now she's like, what, putting them in her oven?
Right above the range.
Why is she putting them
are
in the
bins
oven?
built into
What
the
is
wall
that?
For food such as cereals. that
That's
are
a lot of
Farina.
cereal.
boiling water. And
Isn't
also
farina and cream of
for
wheat the same
seasonings
thing?
used at the range.
I don't know. I've never heard of Farina. Farina to me sounds like an exotic dancer.
So they didn't worry about, people reaching over a hot stove to get their salt and...
No, they
Tea
also
and
didn't
stuff.
mind that their oatmeal, cream of wheat, and flour were also over top of
This
heat,
serving
Yes,
counter,
so it could expire
adjacent
quicker.
to the range, is convenient to both the dining room and the kitchen dining table.
What the hell melee of
This attractive
craziness
dining
she
space
made there?
has been
That's
planned
hard on
to
your
be
eyes, all that red.
but not
Why did the color change so
It
quickly?
gives
I don't know.
ample room for a table
Now they're in a different
that
kitchen.
can be extended to seat 6.
It's a good thing they're all skinny, or they would never fit at that table.
In this
Well,
kitchen,
portions were
that has
smaller
made
back
her
then, as
task
we've
of
already
food
seen.
preparation so much lighter. The housewife can share her family's enjoyment at mealtime.
What, she's supposed to enjoy her meal?
No, just her family's enjoyment of it.
Ah, okay.
She doesn't get to eat it. She just gets to share in their enjoyment.
It's like the end of Star Trek. And not only...
Lots of sci-fi.
Yeah, not only was there the sci-fi element, the one thing that I found interesting is, back during that period of time, during Europe, they were still rationing food. I think the Americans were rationing color. Did you notice that either the scenes where everything was blue or the scenes where everything was red? It was like one dominant color for each
They
scene.
didn't- Well, I can only imagine that they were rationing paint and paint mixtures and then there was obviously an awful lot of Battleship Blue and Battleship Gray out there that they probably had a surplus of. So there's always some mixture of that in there. But you were right when you said, could you imagine marbles hitting that floor? First you got linoleum, and then all the chairs are all chrome, and then the bottom of the stove is chrome, and everything's made of metal. That would have been just a holy hell if you would have dropped a bag of marbles in that place.
Yeah, and I don't know if you remember those plastic seats on those chrome chairs. You would not want to sit on them if you were wearing shorts.
No, especially in the summertime. Yeah. Because it would just, when you went to get up, the chair would go with you, then slip. It would just slowly peel off your body. We had those in my younger youth. And we also had a table like that had almost the chrome-like legs and the aluminum, fake wood-looking aluminum tabletop. And my dad, being the Italian pontiff that he was, he would say we would sit there, and if anybody, oh shit, there goes my mic again, sorry. If anybody questioned him, he was one of those, pound the table. And the thing, it would sound like cymbals crashing, but also because it was just made of aluminum, my dad would go, "This is the way that we're doing it." And everything, salt, pepper shaker plates, everything would jump
Pop
about
up.
a foot and come back down again.
Just like a cartoon.
It was. And then he wonders why I was laughing all the time. What was the target audience for that last clip? School students, interior designers, housewives. I know it wasn't school students.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Rob. Because
I don't think it was interior designers.
Yeah,
either.
because we often talk about audiences, right? When we sort of rate the effectiveness of a film, it's always based on, okay, who is the audience? And this is one of those things where I know that particular film was commissioned by the United States Bureau of Agriculture. So
more conformity.
yeah, I think they were really trying to show that when they were building these new farmhouses, that the government had plans, like blueprints, as you saw, for these types of kitchens. So I think it was the government showing farmers, and maybe, this is, 4-H clubs or other places like that. Well, maybe not with the kids, but other kind of agricultural groups would be shown these films, and people would be told where to get the blueprints for these kitchens to make them themselves.
I could see that. I think it was also a demonstration video to show people who were like you just mentioned, they were, they're coming out of the war and moving into these new prefabricated neighborhoods. This is what you can expect. And they did focus on the woman in the kitchen. It was that time.
Mm-hmm.
That was that time. And I'm not saying anything. It's just that was the time. And I think they wanted the housewife to be comfortable with and get excited about this new luxury, these prefabricated kitchen sets that were everything was perfectly placed for maximum efficiency.
Yes. And Susan, who grew up in a rural area, has a comment.
Bins were common in kitchens down home. Bins for flour, sugar, and potatoes. 50 pounds of flour in a bin. Okay, Susan, you'll appreciate this. And I was talking to my wife about this the other night. Because we're looking around, she went, "Oh my God, we don't have any rice in the house." Well, how come we don't have any rice? My brother, when he used to, pre-COVID, when he would visit on a far more regular basis, used to joke and laugh, and he'd say, "Where do you guys where do you do your shopping? UNICEF? You look like, rat supplies are being dropped in your backyard from a double helo, because we get our flour in a 50-pound sack." Today, 2021, we get our sugar in a 15-pound sack. We got our rice in a 10-kilogram sack. So we've got sack in the kitchen. And it's just because we don't have any other place to store it. Yeah. He's like, "What the hell is all this?"
Yeah, it's interesting, obviously, with places like Costco, where that idea of buying large volumes of staples is actually really coming back as a habit for people.
I think it is. I think just people... The prices fluctuate today anyway, so people want to grab it while they have it, and they know that they always have it. So
Ken has a story relating back to fancy restaurants here. So let me bring it up for you, Chris.
Ken says, "I had a business lunch at a high school. I had a business lunch at a high-end Japanese restaurant when I was in my mid-20s. Very formal, with the boss and software guys from Baltimore. There was ... And I mistook the cup or bowl of tea for a finger bowl, dipping my hands in." You dipped your hands in a teacup with tea in it.
Well,
most people get the finger bowl and drink it thinking that it's tea. You're the only one I know that's ever done it in reverse.
I was going to say I can understand, why you might think that, especially, if you're used to Swiss Chalet or someplace like that, where it's around the same time of the dinner, right? They bring the finger bowl, and it's almost kind of in the same cup.
And I have been to a number of, because Swiss Chalet took over for Ponderosa. So Ponderosa was more in my family the 70s, and then Swiss Chalet was the 80s for when you wanted to take a bunch of kids out at the same, like for a birthday party or something like that. And I've seen way too many times people sipping the thinking that it was a lemonade.
Yeah.
It was a hot steamed lemonade. It's like, no, it's a freaking finger bowl.
Yeah.
But dipping your fingers in orange pico, that's funny.
Yeah, well, I mean, it also was, in fairness to Ken, it was a Japanese restaurant, so
it might have been just a green tea, probably clear. Yeah,
and they actually probably would bring down either finger bowls or the wet napkins for you to wipe your hands with. So, but
The other
yeah,
thing-
that is kind of embarrassing in a business lunch. You know?
They're like, "Hey, Jed Clampett, how do you like the finger bowl?" You're like, "Ugh, Jed, crap."
Want to jump into the cement pond later?
Let's do it.
Shoot
Go
some
on in there.
billiards?
I'm gonna go in there and swim with the fishes. The other thing about Japanese restaurants is, if you order sake, it comes in. They don't have stems on their cups.
That's true.
So
Yeah.
it's a goblet. So, and that's for sake. That's for tea. I'll go to a Japanese restaurant and drink my body weight in jasmine tea, and then you get the finger bowl. They all are the same bowl.
That's true.
So Ken, I understand how this happened to you. It's still very funny.
Indeed. All right, so let's go from 1949, zoom all the way to 1970, and things have very much changed, if nothing else in terms of color, and also
How about decorum?
and decorum and decor. So one of the things that I absolutely loved about The Galloping Gourmet, which is a show I remember watching as a kid. And of course, I don't care about cooking, but there was something fascinating about it. So there are a few things fascinating about it. So, for those of you who might remember that show, and we're going to show you some clips from it in a moment, the number one thing was the set. It had that exposed brick. It looked like, you were inside a winery in Spain or something like that. I remember my aunt, who was very, on the edge of all the trends and stuff like that. Her basements used to be like that. They always had, the bullfighter on black velvet, in a Rembrandt copy, and then, all this exposed brick and stuff like that. So that's the one thing that I related to. And then, the other thing about The Galloping Gourmet, as you're going to see, is very politically incorrect. He had a lot of double entendres. He really tried to quite literally kind of sex up the food, which was a pretty novel idea at the time, considering the only cooking shows were like Julia Child and a couple other ones that were pretty straight down the line. So this guy, Graham Kerr, was really trying to bring the cooking show into the modern era, and he had obviously the sideburns and everything else. So as we'll see in a moment, the other thing that was cool about the show, Chris, was the fact that it was a half-hour show, which meant it was really only 22 minutes long without commercials, and they'd spend a half to two-thirds doing a travel log and doing a story, and then they would only have like about 5 to 7 minutes to actually cook the dish, and the dishes were incredibly complicated. So we had to go fast.
Great planning.
Right? So is there anything you want people to watch out for as they watch our film here on The Galloping Gourmet?
The only thing I want people to watch really is the I guess it's the speed in which he puts the dish together, because you don't even realize that he's prepped anything. But as he's talking, he's almost like a magician. While you're watching this hand is making the magic, because he actually does put all of this stuff together and eventually get it into the oven. But you didn't see him actually do almost any of it, because the rest of it is all just this stand-up routine. He almost does it with his eyes closed. It's pretty amazing.
It's magic. So
It's magic.
Let's have a look. Graham Kerr, The Galloping Gourmet.
I have here rather a large saddle. I went to Calgary this year.
More men should cook with ties and long-sleeve dress shirts.
Canadian lamb. I'd like you to see
bright
the price
yellow shirts.
that we paid for the saddles. $85.
Wow, I remember my dad buying a car back
That
then
is
for less than
Canadian
$85.
Now, I
smokes,
trimmed
that
it
is
back a bit
expensive.
and sent some back.
But is that what they call it? They call it a
This little
saddle? I thought
fella
he was
cost
kidding.
$20. And I'm not expecting you to do very much about it, except make sure that if you do buy Canadian lamb, buy it at a sensible price. Because that is ridiculous. I think that is stupid.
Well,
All right, so we've got
that
all
butcher's
that.
been slammed.
We know what
Now
he
look,
feels.
What I'd like to show you is this. This green thing is celery.
I remember when every basement had that sort of exposed brick look back in the 70s, every fashionable one.
Yeah, and the archway.
Yeah.
They all had an archway too. Everything had to look like it was underneath a winery.
Is you chop them up.
Yeah, it's all very sort of kind of Spanish kind of looking.
All right,
Yeah.
so just take a little clarified butter.
And the dark wood, of course.
What's so funny?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. It didn't melt.
Always make it sound like a bull. Always gets it going. Right. Just take some. If that was another bleep for you people in New York, congratulations. It's nice to be part of the human race.
Oh, wow. He's taking everybody down.
Putting that up
Canadian
there,
lamb
like
farmers.
take 3
Down.
kidneys.
New York.
Those are 3
Down.
kidneys. Left, right, and... Just slice those up there so as to get them...
Yeah, we don't get enough kidney cooking in Canada today.
There's a reason. It's an organ. Blood goes through it. Blood dies in it.
Down into the bottom of there. Do you like kidneys, madam? Thank you. Right. Take 2 large, small...
Oh!
Small size of mushroom. Slice
Holy
the
crap, I
mushroom
know this is like a long time ago, but I'm afraid to air this now.
With another 3 ounces. So having done that, you let it fry a little bit. And when it's
We didn't
fried a
write
little
it, we're
bit,
just making
about
fun of it,
15 minutes
folks.
thereabouts, you put it over there, put that down there, bring that back there, turn that into there, let that cool down, and here it is, when it's cool.
This guy's awesome.
Right. Now, get hold of your saddle. Take a sharp knife, take this piece of the fell and go... Just cut off the edge of the fell, cut off the edge of the blanket, like that. You don't want a piece of blanket. That's like blanket.
No, you don't want a piece of blanket on your food, and it doesn't look like it comes off easy.
It won't come down properly, will it?
What is he doing?
Trim that over like that. Do that like
This
that.
guy's nuts.
Screw it with salt like that. Pardon, madam. Speak to me afterwards. With thine eyes and we will... Now let's get on with this.
What is this guy on?
And grind some black pepper. Better when you cross your feet. Having done that, why? Speak to me then.
This guy is
Can't give away
crazy.
everything on the show. Then you pile all that slush in the middle. Are you pleased?
Appetizing.
Slush.
No, that's all right. I never really know. And then you just simply take some oysters, some nice plump oysters in there.
Okay, this is a dare.
Do stop talking to yourselves. I mean, if you want to make appointments for the PTA, come up here and let everybody know when they're meeting.
Gotta say, I love the sideburns.
I love it. I love his butter-colored shirt.
Video director to pass amongst you. He has learnt mouth-to-mouth resuscitation.
Oh my gosh.
Side order of leering with your entree?
Yes.
Doesn't matter. He'll wait another day.
Pinky ring. Another pinky ring.
That's right. Maybe he's actually the same guy who was in the 1960 film, The Butcher Boy. He grew up to be the Galloping Gourmet.
And because we said he had a hairstyle that was getting enlisted, perhaps he was stationed in Scotland.
Yeah. And then he went all mod for the late 60s, early 70s.
He did.
And here it is.
Well, he got out of the military. He can do whatever you want now.
Beautiful. How many more minutes have I got?
Oh, look at that.
He was like the Kreskin of the kitchen, you know, it was magic and suddenly appeared.
I designed everything myself. You can shoot it all off there. There's a reservoir for floating kidneys. Delicious. And you surround it with the cuttings from your lawnmower.
We don't even need to be here. He's riffing himself.
Quite gorgeous.
This guy's taking care of all our good lines.
Like this. Here you just... the floor director's just gone out.
What is with these cutaways? These cutaways are terrible. Oh, wow.
Where did they get these
jarring.
people in the audience?
Right, here is a beautiful succulent piece of lamb.
That is not the way that you shoot these days.
Not underdone, then underdone. There you are. Don't get too fat on that.
Oh my God! You know, like when you watch baseball and they cut away and it's all the beautiful people in the stand. That was not what they were doing here.
Well, these are the beautiful people, Chris.
Oh, what the? Was that Squiggy?
Squiggy from Laverne and Shirley.
I do all the menial things.
He was an extra in this.
So here,
David Lander needed something to do.
What is? Sideburns were in, braces were not.
Eat your heart, child.
I think that's why this guy was considered so good looking, because he had all of his own teeth and they were roughly in the right position.
Yes.
It is delicious. I can hardly swallow because I'm Scottish and it costs so much. Thank you so much for being with me once again. May God bless you.
What a great line to close on.
You know, you could practically smell the Brut on this guy, even though you're not in the room.
Oh, yeah. Brut by Fabergé.
Very much one of those pieces that were of its time, but I love it. I can't get enough of that stuff.
He just got more and more animated as it went on. And Susan chimed in. I saw that come across the bottom saying, I doubt he was sober through any of these episodes. Hey, who knows? There it is. I'm not sure he was entirely sober for these shows. You know what? I don't know that you're joking. He might not have been sober for these shows. I
do know in some of the episodes you actually see him drinking. Well, you see him drinking wine at the beginning of the episode and also while he's cooking and sometimes afterwards too. But that was also kind of his personality. So
that was awesome. That was so much fun.
For those of you wondering what happened to the Galloping Gourmet, it's an interesting story, and we'll get to that in a moment. But one of the things that I wanted to do was revisit the end of that video because, as you saw, when they were cutting away to the audience,
oh no,
the audience is not what you would think of as an audience today. They're an interesting group of characters. So let's have a quick look at this. So this was before, I think, good dental plans, if nothing else. And let me straighten.
The thing I don't understand is the cutaways didn't last long enough.
Yeah,
just flash. It was like they were trying to scare. It was like a horror movie.
Yeah, and I think maybe it was because they didn't have enough beautiful people in the audience. That's the only thing I could.
So don't show anybody.
Yeah, but the interesting thing, particularly, is the dentistry back then. This lady isn't too bad. Her teeth are a little.
She could have used Visalign. That's all.
Yeah.
She would have just had Visalign. She'd have made it. What else we got?
So then we have. Okay, is it not working here? Then we have this lady here, a little bit older. She looks like one of the two Ronnies. You remember that show in England? And then we actually have the other Ronnie. We'll get to him in a second. There we are.
Oh, come on.
Now, this guy, Chris, looks like he probably would have been in the Royal Air Force during the war.
Possibly, yeah. But at the same time, if you,
he had the RAF mustache, he had the British teeth, and then the other guy, I guess there were only a certain number of types of eyeglasses for sale back then, because the next guy they show is wearing the same pair of glasses, exactly the same pair.
Wow, maybe because the cutaways were so quick, maybe they just had somebody step. Okay, wear the glasses and go. And don't worry, we'll fix it in post.
And then finally, there was our favorite, which was the last guy, who, if you don't believe he looks like Squiggy from Laverne and Shirley, check this out.
Oh, come on. I can't believe you found that. This is brilliant. You know who he actually also looks a little bit like? I don't know why I just said that 3 times. A little bit like Eddie Munster.
That's true. Butch Patrick. So Alan says...
Wow.
Oh, my.
Okay. This might be our last episode. So thanks for joining us on Cheezy Sales Cinema.
And then, yes, I think this is probably more related to the set.
Oh, that would have been great.
Galloping Gourmet and Dave Allen.
Dave Allen at large over for dinner. I would have loved to have seen those two on a show together.
Yes. Well, they both had that sort of kind of naughty English sort of sense of humor.
Yeah.
And their sets were also very similar, too.
Yeah, quite. Very 70s. Very 70s. That was amazing.
So, yeah. We're going to talk about what happened to Graham Kerr, because it's actually an interesting story. Now, he actually is still active. He's still alive. And he got back into TV a few years ago. I say a few years ago, maybe 10 years ago or so. He kind of disappeared a little bit. And before he disappeared, when he was still doing Galloping Gourmet, he was made an offer by the people who make Glad Wrap. So just think of how ubiquitous Glad Wrap is now. Like, when you're putting sandwiches or whatever in the kitchen, everybody uses it. So he was given the opportunity to make 5 cents on every single unit sold if he would advertise for Glad Wrap and use it on his show. And he said no. Can you imagine how much he would be worth now? 5 cents for every single one.
I find it hard to say no to anything because of stories like this. They hurt me to my very soul.
So then what happened was he had a come to Jesus moment. He became a born again Christian, and
I'll bet you he did, because he screwed up as a normal person.
And here was the interesting thing. He also had some health trouble, some heart trouble, because of all the fatty food that he ate. So he became an evangelist, not only for the church, but also for healthier food and vegetarian options. So
that's very cool.
So when he came back, he had a couple shows in the 90s and the 2000s, like Graham Kerr's Kitchen and stuff like that. But they didn't quite get the same traction as the Galloping Gourmet, because you had the difference between, some young guy sexing up Lamb Apollo and then suddenly some old guy cutting up carrot sticks and reading Bible verses. Which would you rather watch?
Not the latter.
Yeah, and
nope, not that last one. Nope.
Nothing against people of faith, but in terms of television for a mainstream audience, that just didn't work nearly as well as the Galloping
So this guy
Gourmet.
went from doing destination blogs, sort of. What did you say he did for the first 2/3 of every show?
Travel logs. So for the Lamb Apollo episode, he would go to Greece at one of the finest restaurants in Greece and have the Lamb Apollo there.
Okay, and then so he does that and then makes the Lamb Apollo and drinks and tells rude jokes and makes fun of people. And then he comes back and he's quoting Bible verses and cutting up friggin' garnish and calling that food. Yeah, I'm not watching that.
Yeah, it just wasn't quite as sexy. And he was actually quite upset too that he's, not very happy that the reruns keep playing, because he was not very happy. He felt that he not only encouraged obesity, but also, as he got older, he became embarrassed by the double entendres and everything else. So
it was comedy.
Yeah,
it was
what?
Comedy. It's a joke. You can't take that seriously.
Yeah, I think he was being too hard on himself. I mean, I think the fast food restaurants did a lot more for obesity than anybody watching the Galloping Gourmet, because what kids do go, hey, let's get fat on some Lamb Apollo. Let's, put together some oysters and get a saddle of lamb and...
Never heard that. Never heard that uttered. Funny you mentioned that.
Yeah, so there we go. From the 40s to the 70s, that is the art of dinner for at least 20 years. And thank you for joining us, and thank you for sending in your comments. Any final thoughts, Chris, before we head off?
Food, it needs to be respected because not everybody has it. So obviously there was a lot of gluttony and a lot of excess in that, but the people that were doing it in these shows, they did appreciate it. Even the Galloping Gourmet, he appreciated every morsel he was eating. He stopped just long enough to appreciate it. And because it is such a social culture surrounding food, it's good to remember that not everybody has it. So have fun, respect it, enjoy it, savor it, and eat well. Everybody in all of those videos were eating well. I know he's upset at himself because there was excessive amount. Just trim a little more fat off, trim a little more blanket off your lamb next time, but eat well.
Exactly. So if you haven't yet, check out our other episodes. We actually do non-live episodes every couple of weeks in between the live ones. The last one we did on the Apple Newton, I think a lot of you may not have seen that one yet. I had to repost it because I posted the wrong video. So my apologies for that. But yeah, go back, check out our channel. There's probably ones that you haven't seen yet. And it's a great way to pass a rainy afternoon or an evening where you just want some laughter and you want Chris and I around. And we love being with you.
I got to tell you something, folks. If you are a computer nut, if you're a PDA nut, if you love your iPhone, as I love my iPhone, or Android or whatever, I just love my iPhone, or somebody who's a computer nerd, somebody who loves tech, you have to watch the Newton episode because it will blow your mind how far in the future they were. And that had to have been that, and the fact that Apple sucked at marketing anything back then. That had to have been one of the biggest reasons why it didn't make. But if you forgot about the Newton, you have to watch this one. You'll be like, oh, I would have owned one of those. It's a really cool piece of machinery.
Yeah, definitely sort of the pre or proto cell phone. And, yeah. And as we get ready to finish off,
thanks, Ken.
Thank you, Ken. We appreciate that. And of course, also, Rob.
Good night, Rob.
Thank you for joining us. Same with Alan, Lori, Susan.
BJ was there.
BJ, yes. Great to have you in, BJ. Everybody who commented tonight, even those of you who were watching but didn't get a chance to comment, we are so glad that you were with us. We're going to do another live in about a month's time. We don't have a topic for it yet, so get a hold of us. If you have a really good idea for a topic, we would love to do that.
And we will see you then. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. And again, thanks so much for your comments.
Have a good night.
Good night, everybody.